lipstick on.
It's chapstick,
Purple.
not lipstick. I don't even wear makeup. It doesn't say that on StreamYard.
Um,
Thank you, Emily. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for tuning in, listening, watching, wherever you found us. Um, John, what about what I was
yes.
saying? You know how I was saying that we were talking in our last show, like an hour ago, about suicide. Um, what would you advise people in terms of faith and going to Christ, maybe in their struggles or finding their purpose and other things related to like countering it, possibly find reasons that we are to be around. We have purpose of living and at the same time a way to serve God.
Yeah. I know this is a hard subject, especially for a lot of people that suffer from depression of various forms and lengths and stuff like that. I think I know for me, I had to concentrate on God's love for me and also realize that I'm going to be spending eternity with Him. And that was something really to look forward to. I know it's hard to visualize that. How do you visualize eternity? How do you visualize God? But he repeats it and talks about it over and over again. And I think there are times when I seem to go into a depressive state, that I'm not doing that. Um, Again, it's not the same thing for everybody because different people have depression for different reasons. Sometimes it's a chemical imbalance in your body, and sometimes it's just thinking that you have no hope or you have no future. And I think we
Well,
struggle
and
with that.
it can also sometimes be situation like you know how like what I'm going through because my dad's dying, but I supposedly don't have clinical depression, but situational that you know what I'm saying? It's supposedly when he actually goes and a year after and I get used to life without him, that then suddenly I won't have depression because it was situation induced. So there's others like that aren't really clinical, but you still go through, right?
Yeah. I think we also need a good friend, uh, someone we can talk to about everything that's going on in our lives. And I would say it's probably a good idea to have a good Christian friend if you can, and just go through a lot of stuff that you're going through. And then some people just need to, have a talk with a therapist and stuff like that. They can pull them up and out of, because there's a lot of things that we forget. And when we talk to friends or a therapist, they help us to see things that we have kind of put on a back shelf. And we need to. And I think the other thing, and this is something I got to repeat in my mind over and over again, is what do I have to be grateful for? And when I start thinking about all the different things that God has done in my life to help me to be grateful, uh, it seems to pull me up more times than often. It seems to pull me up and out of the depression that I'm in. What is it that I'm grateful for? Especially when it comes to God, you know? But there's a lot of things that happen in our lives that we forget to be grateful. And how does that work, So I've got to, if you got to go wake up in the morning and say your prayers, or when you go to bed at night, and then ask God to help you remember what to be grateful for. I know that seems really crazy, that He needs to remind us, but we live in a complicated society, and there's many things that are going on in our lives, um, especially on the outside world. Uh, Things like, what am I going to do to keep a roof over my head, or different things, getting a job. There's a lot of things that can cause depression too, but sometimes none of those things are in the middle of this. It's just that you have something you're going through and you don't even know. And I think you need to ask God to make that knowledge available to you so you can peel it back like an onion. Um, because a lot of our problems are multi layered. I know I was part of a 12-step program for men, and one of the big deals was pulling back the onion, pulling back the layers of that onion. Um, and then a lot of times we would talk in there about blessings and things that we were grateful for. And it really did help me and other people too. So um, that's for me.
What
I
about
don't know.
what about reading the Bible and maybe looking up, if you have like a app that's a Bible app,
Yes,
looking up love, or maybe even searching suicide and see what God has to say about it.
right. Um, that's a great idea, Jennifer. Um, to read through the Bible and cut it off at the pass. If you can set up a Bible program. Some people like to do it in the morning. Some people like to do it at night.
You
Personally,
mean a
I like to
regular
rather do
routine?
it.
You mean a regular devotional routine, right? When you say
Yeah. And I know what you mean about the app. I have the app. I don't even carry a Bible with me anymore because the app is so good.
so it's not
Uh,
just me.
you know, and sometimes when I'm working and I don't have time to read it, I turn the app on and let it do the audio version, and I
Yeah,
have that
I do
running
that
in the
too.
back in the and then I have that running in the background, and I may not pick up everything, but it's amazing how much actually gets through. Um, if
Doesn't it have
we,
a therapeutic impact on you? Like, let's say if you're depressed, when you may be working and you're not depressed enough to lose interest in your, job or hobbies, right? But you're feeling
Yeah,
downward. And then we listen to the Bible while doing that whatever task, right? Either it's around the house, like laundry, or it's work related. We're
yep.
doing something. We listen. And like you're saying, it may not be our full attention on the Bible, but we use it as a therapy. And how many times we end up finding ourselves more productive because whether we realize it or not, it lifted our mood to where we're back to our normal productivity and or additional excitement from the Bible when we come, from really low back to our normal, and then our mood goes up even more of excitement. I can do this for God, and this for God, and here's some talents God gave me. This is what I'm going to do in my life. And, we develop goals because we get inspired and driven, excited.
Yeah, the other thing is when we're reading or listening to the Bible, you have to remember, and sometimes you got to remind yourself of this, that you're actually having a conversation with the creator of the universe. And how powerful is that? You know, he's actually conversing with you and he's actually having you listen to his words. Um, and I desperately, in my soul, want to connect on that level with him and say, please, God, uh, please talk to me. You know where I'm at. I don't even know where I'm at, but you do. So please talk to me at that place and time. And then it's really amazing when you'll land on certain things, or if you have an app and you're listening there. And you can have on an app, you can have King James Version, you can have New American Standard, whatever one it is that you identify with. But always remember, in the background, it's God, it's creator of the universe talking to us. You know, how many billions of people live on this planet? And he's many times just talking to us as individuals. How powerful is that? You know? And I forget, and I really kind of beat myself up a little bit when I forget that. But I have to remember that. I have to remember that because I need all the help I can get because there's just so many things in our culture, in our world, and in my life, and in my family that just doesn't make sense. So I need it to make sense, and God will make it sense for my ability and for where I'm at. Because everybody's different. Everybody's different. So I need that, and I have to ask God for that. Um, it's just a very powerful thing. When do we have a chance, especially when we're lonely and we don't have hardly anybody else in our lives, that we have the God of the universe that is always available, always, and He wants us to reach out to Him and have conversations with Him. It's just a very powerful thing to me, and it's something I've got to really center on. What do you think about that, Jennifer? Do you kind of do the same thing?
You mean having scripture? Because I was thinking about music. I sit on like this one song
Mm.
by Stars Go Dim. It's called "You Are Loved," and it basically is therapeutic in my opinion, where it's supposed to be basically them saying that God is saying the message, "You are loved," more than 1,000 pieces, more than the world can see. Because look up above and know that you are loved.
Boy, that's a good point. I forgot about the worship music or music. That's the other thing that you can have running in the background. Maranatha, different Christian groups or Christian performers
Did you say
that
Maranatha? Do you
have
mean Meredith Andrews?
what is it?
You said Maranatha. Do you mean Meredith Andrews?
No, Maranatha is a worship organization
Oh,
um, out of California. Chuck Smith was a pastor of that church. Um, you're right. I forgot all about the music and having certain performers that you really like a lot, have it just running in the background if they have really
Well,
good lyrics that are.
and I think it needs to be those that are Christian and like the music, the singers and the music being those that are Christian and uplift us instead of just we like it, but for some reason it pulls us down, right? Like one of my favorite songs, this by Casting Crowns.
Yeah,
It's Only Jesus. I don't want to leave a legacy. I don't care if they remember me, but only Jesus. I've only got one life to live. Wherever I will be holding still, there's only one thing I can imagine, and that's only Jesus.
yep. Music is a big deal. It was a big deal to God. Worship. Uh, it was usually in heaven too. Was usually music. That's where Lucifer. He was a leader of worship music in heaven before he fell. So that tells me that God really uh, thinks a lot about music, because there's just certain ways music reaches your soul. It reaches deep into
It really
your
does.
spirit.
It really does. I've had this
Um,
new adventure because of that. Like, okay, so my dad always told me growing up, because I told you I'm a preacher's kid. So my dad was a pastor, so he was always a man of God in the eyes of different people, including himself, that he seems to have always been able to hear God's voice. And he'd actually hear God talk to him. And he told me, well, if you spend enough time studying the Bible and you bond enough with God, going to him for everything, handing him your life and devoting your whole life to his will for your life, that you will be able to one day hear God's voice. And I
right,
put down the dad. I'm like, not everybody has that gift, Dad. I'm like, you've got that gift. That doesn't mean everybody does, because we all got different gifts. I'm like, mine's teaching, why I do my tutoring, right? And we all have different
right.
gifts. But then here, since we've had this Jaws Christ talk, and John, you and I've been in this whole like spreading the gospel mission with it, right? I was
Yeah,
taking a bath and I closed my eyes intending to lay down and rinse my hair, and I heard God's voice, and I am not kidding you. Like,
yeah,
he said something along the lines of, Jennifer, I am with you. And I said, Lord, are you telling me about something? Is there a hard time coming up? He said, focus on me. Trust in me. I am with you. And I said, what are you telling me about? And he said, wait and see, but focus on me. So then the next morning, I carry on like another day. Okay, because my bath is my nighttime routine. So I went on with the day, and then about 5 o'clock in the evening of the following day, after this revelation and actually hearing his voice and having a conversation with God, even though it's short, I find out there's COVID in my house again. So my stepmom, she didn't tell me until 5 o'clock that following day, but turns out that it was earlier the day that God spoke to me. Because when she actually went to the urgent care and actually found out, but she just didn't tell me until give or take 24 hours after God told me the hardship was coming. But she had COVID again. And so my mom and I were all this wearing masks all over our house, spraying Lysol like crazy. And, we go back to the whole depression thing, right? I'm going through that depression because I can't do things like going to the gym, swimming, and everything else I do at the gym. My whole social circle, like a coffee group I have there that I go to, Panera Bread, my doctors. I mean, all this stuff I usually do that's outside of my house, I couldn't do. But my mind
Yeah.
kept going back to, and I wasn't doing this to myself. I wasn't intentionally saying this, but my mind kept saying, focus on God. And then I get down and focus on God. And I just couldn't go that week or whatever, just something like 5 days before Madre tested negative for COVID. And we actually went back to our usual of, not wearing masks and stuff and going out. But that whole 4 to 5 days, I couldn't focus on something negative, like, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that, without suddenly hearing, focus on God. That's all I could hear. Like, otherwise, my attention had to stay on something productive. It was quite an experience.
Wow, sounds like it. That's amazing. Uh, when we
To
think
me,
about,
if I'm reaching this new level with my spiritual walk, that says that you and I are doing something right in the eyes of God with what we're doing, trying to spread the name. And He is using us. We may be two people that can't work full-time jobs. But look, God is still using us. And it may more be hobby for us, right? But who
right,
says a hobby cannot be used to serve God and that it has to be a paid job, right?
right. Oh, you know what? This journey that we're on in this life is really extraordinary if you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Sometimes we can concentrate on the afflictions that we have or the bad things that we have. Uh, you and I both suffer from stuff that can make us depressed too, you know. But he also gave us gifts too. And you know, when we think about these afflictions in our life, um, do you think God is doing that to hurt us, to make us sad or depressed, or is there a end game to all of this? What He's trying to help us to understand. I
Well,
know with my hips,
according to
with
Scripture,
my
it's His way of bringing our attention back to God. God uses hardships to bring our attention back to Him because we probably walked astray, or because He's trying to teach us something. The lesson's not always to focus on Him. There could be other lessons, like, say, when I first came out of my first year out of brain surgery and I was in recuperation. My brain was physically healing in addition to the rerouting of thoughts and everything else to be able to process information like a normal brain, only without a big chunk
right,
get moved. Okay, so I was trying to work and everything, and I was like, yeah, now I'm free of seizures. I can work. I'm not disabled anymore. Yeah, He gave me some hardships, and I eventually decided I'm just going to pray to God that His will is what will be done, and not that of my own. And then I saw myself getting into the more comfort zone of working a bit so I can serve Him through the work I do, like my books and stuff, right, in this podcast. But
right,
I noticed that I started to see some good stuff to the fact that I don't have to work full time. I mean, because it's in our case, it's not really that we don't have to versus we can't, but because we can't, then we have our benefits. That's why we don't have to, you know.
right,
But thinking of that, I had always struggled with the idea that here I was, a woman in her 30s. So all these people ask, well, hey, do you have a house? Or do you have a rent? Do you have an apartment? And I'm like, I live with my parents. I'm in my freaking 30s and I still live with my parents. So to me, that seems like shame, right? Because,
right,
they expect me to, they even ask me, sometimes people ask me, like when we're leaving the gym together, so where'd you park? I don't have a license.
Yeah.
And they're like, what? How'd you get here? Anybody think about Uber? As famous as it is nationwide now? I mean, but they don't. It's the whole assumption if you're an adult, you have a car and you drive. It's the assumption that if you're an adult, then you must work and you must also have your own place to live, right? Like you may have a sweetheart, like a husband, wife, or whoever, but you have your own place. You're not still with your parents. You know, the stigma, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So I often battle that, but then I started to see, and that's why I felt so ashamed of being disabled. And like, it put me in a category of people that are lazy and all that kind of stuff. You know how people who don't understand us really tend to
Yep.
believe it. So that to me made the fact that I need my disability and that I am disabled feel like shame. Clearly, Satan used that to place shame over me. And in reality, when I went through this process in 2021 and got from me the hardships and he showed me, I actually started to see light. Like the beauty of the fact that I don't have to work full time, so I have time to read books. I have time to do this with you and the others with Emily and Kurt and so forth, right?
Right.
I
Right.
have time to hang out with my friends. And one guy that one of my best friends, I go to dinner with every Tuesday and breakfast with every Friday. Another friend I see every Wednesday in water aerobics in the morning, and so forth. I can do all these things, seeing all these different friends, and having access to all these different activities, you know, the gym or the coffee shop or the mall to go shopping or a book to read, even go shopping for books. And when I got 6 shelves of books I haven't read, I mean, you know, the joy, you see what I'm saying? God showed me the beauty of my situation. And then suddenly I was no longer focused on being normal and feeling ashamed that I wasn't normal.
What is normal? What is normal for each
Being able to
individual?
work a full time job, you know how stigmas say, having your own place to live when you're, you know, after 20 something years old, you have your own place to live, you have your own full time job, you possibly even have a sweetheart and or kids. I mean, the stigma, that's what I'm talking about. So, I mean, the society defines as normal, not necessarily the psychological normal. Where so many of us
Right.
have so many different things in our brain, we don't even know what is normal, right? And in that sense, it's very highly diverse.
And the other thing you got to think about too is all this will pass. All this will pass, and it won't take forever to pass. It depends on who we are and how old we are and everything, but these afflictions and things like that will not be with us throughout eternity. I can't wait. You know, I'll have my leg back and I'll be able to jog and run. What's that going to be like? And with you, everything will be totally normal in your psyche and your brain. There will come a time when all these things will pass away. It's all temporary. And that's what we got to remember is things in our lives are temporary. And when good things and we're blessed, we need to hold on to those things and to think about them and to enjoy them when they happen. Like last
Something
night
you
we went
said,
to,
something you
you
said,
what?
so these are going to go away. We will have a time we don't have them. I like to think of it as
Right.
our current life, whether it's 40 years, it's 70 years, it's 80 years long, however long we live, is a pin drop, one dot with a pen of a small dot of ink on an entire piece of notebook paper. That's how small of a time our life is compared to the eternity.
Right.
You got a 8 by 11 notebook paper with one dot of black ink. And our life that we think is so hard for different reasons spiritually, right? Or at least, or morally, or other ways like that related to serving God, right? Or even growing to a point to find our purpose. And with some people, they find their purpose, but they have a hard time accepting that, God's way is better than their own. And so they don't even dedicate their life fully to God, to live His will for their life, right? So there's all these hurdles, the whole way, even we're all trying to grow in faith. But the reality is, that is the tiny, all those years of that is that tiny one dot with black ink made with a pen on notebook-sized paper.
Yeah. Remember the Bible says, count these afflictions as good. I know sometimes I want to scream. I want to shout, because I don't want to count some of these things as good. But God says do it anyway. What benefit is that disability or that thing that's happening, and what is the benefit of that? Instead of looking at everything like that as being bad, my first default is to look at it as being bad, or my life's over, or this is not going to be good, or
I have those
it's
same
going to be
thoughts. Yes. Amen. I have those same thoughts.
painful. All human beings do, and that's why it talks about that. We look at the negative side, but if we have a God and He doesn't do things to us out of spite, out of hate, out of any of these things, and He's doing it because He loves us. And then there's times I go, well, don't love me so much. It's but I have to back off and
because
think
that's the
about.
cost of being loved. Even great things all have their pros and cons. There's the beauty of love, but there is a price to pay with being loved. Like an example, you could talk about that I wouldn't necessarily know much about. The beauty of a marriage. Okay, like my older sister says, marriage is made way out, is overrated. It's made way out grander and better than it really is. Because you now suddenly, when you spend all these years married, you can't do what you like anymore. You have to do whatever this both of y'all enjoy. And because it's instead of just you doing whatever you enjoy, where you live or what kind of work you do or whatever, it's suddenly, I got to do what my whoever other half also likes to do, and these certain things she or he doesn't like anymore or never liked that I do. I can't do because I have to be in agreement with stuff we as a family do, right?
Yeah.
So there's a pro and con to it all. So in that case, you could say this not being able to do whatever that you yourself want to do because you have to always have that other person involved and do things you agree on. That's a negative that comes to the beauty of, in that case, a romantic relationship, right? Your wife or husband. So even when it comes to God's love, like that, there's a price to be loved. I mean, love is beautiful. God's love, each other's love, us with our friends, our family, all that. But even love itself has a price. But what you're talking about,
you know what?
Like, God, if you love me too much, those are the hardships, are the price of God's love for you. And that's not individual to you. Your hardships may be different than mine. But that is the reality of all of us Christians or others who will dedicate their life to Christ. And they will start that. They have a lot more blessings from God as a result of giving their life to Christ and committing it. But they'll also see hardships. Like I'm in my Bible devotions, I'm reading about in Acts about John being persecuted because he served the Lord. That was Paul. Just kidding, Paul. But there you go. You get what I'm saying?
Well, they all took on a lot of abuse. Paul, especially. You know, you're right about a marriage, but my wife had me listen to something the other day about a preacher that was teaching what God expects out of a man, and when he gets married. And many times, and I didn't live this way. Jennifer, I'm gonna admit to it right now. I didn't live this way. I thought it was our marriage. She should do what I wanted because I was the leader of the marriage or the household. She had to give up herself. And in reality, what he was teaching was it was just the opposite. The man has to give up. He has to make because she is the tender root. She is the weaker vessel. And I have started living my life with that in mind now with her. I want to finish up because we're both in our 70s, and I want to finish this race good. I want to finish it because I didn't always finish it good. I wanted my way and I was selfish, and now I need to learn how to be selfless. And it's not always what I want, but I now really think of her before myself. And it's a real, for me, it's been a real flip flop. It's been a real change. Uh, things that would make me angry before, I just pass off now, and whatever had happened there was very temporary. And maybe she was angry too, but maybe she was tired or hungry or whatever that is that's going on. And I just want to please her now. And when I please her, I please God. And this is something that I have to really concentrate on every day. I'm getting better at it, but I'm not really there. And I probably won't be there until I pass from this world. But there's a lot of things that I wanted to accomplish in my life and wanted to have a name for myself, you know. I always thought I was going to be this big bad photographer, and I did. I was a very good photographer. Uh, but then I had this problem with my hip, and I couldn't go out and photograph the things I wanted to, like landscapes and wildlife. I can't do that. So when I let it go, I realized that it was not that big a deal. And then I can do other things that are creative. But I also want to think about what can we do together that is a lot of fun with me and her. You know what I'm saying? What can we do? And we found out that doing the gardening work and stuff like that, we get excited when we talk about it and get out there and work together and laugh and giggle and
Maybe
talk about
dream.
dreams.
Like you may
Um,
be dreaming, maybe we should put
yeah,
this and this other flower over in this area, or this certain type of bush, right?
right, right. She did that for me in the very early years when it came to photography. She really wanted to become a photographer and learn all that, but not to the degree that I did. And I always thought I was going to build a big name and have this big, geez, big reputation. Okay, just like artists or poets or book writers or any of these people have dreams of becoming well known. You know, and now I
Mm-hmm.
could care less. And now I don't have a DSLR equipment anymore, and I've really learned to be a good photographer with my cell phone and videos too. And that's exciting. And then when I build websites and I talk to people and I say, hey, put together certain things, and I will go into Premiere Pro and make these creative things from stuff that you have done. And that excites me now too. You know what I'm saying? And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, wow, this is a lot of fun. And how can I market your business? How can I do this stuff for you? So it's like really improving someone else. It's like giving gifts, you know. Um,
Well,
I
yeah,
know
because
this sounds strange, but
you're giving service to my business, but then you're giving the joy of art to yourself when you do like those videos you're talking about, you know?
yeah,
So in that sense, you're giving to two people slash groups, right? So that's
so,
something I think a lot of people need to see is when they're doing a job they love, they may think, oh, I've given so many hours to this, whoever. But in reality, if it's something you love, was it only the business that you gave to, or was it also yourself, meaning the joy of, the whatever kind of task or job or hobby or something that we enjoy, right?
well, exactly. Uh, how can I do certain things, and how can I help promote you? How can I do that? Um, and there is many ways of doing that. It's like giving a gift. It's better to give than receive. Um, I know people give me stuff, but when I give something to somebody else that's meaningful and it's something that can really help them or they can use, then
Mm-hmm.
there is something that happens inside of your spirit that you're like, how cool is that? How cool is that? And I
Fulfillment.
want to be able to do that. And then I think about God. What did he do? What did he do for mankind? He
I'm sure it's over
paid
millions
for
of
our
things.
sins.
I
He
mean,
paid for
like
our
some,
sins.
like you're saying, gratitude. Well, God gave us jobs. God gave us some source of income. God gave us the place we're sitting right now where we live. Different people, different sizes, different budgets, but for the most of us, we have a place to reside. We have food to eat. Remember talking about the gratitude? Because how many of us think, they got life hard until you see someone on the street, like an actual homeless person, as opposed to someone who does that just to in place of working a job, right? And you can tell based on the way how dirty they are or something like that, right?
Right. Here's something to think about too. We went to eat last night with my son and my grandson. We went to Native New Yorker and had chicken wings. And we've been doing this for a while, but sometimes I forget. And God reminded me. But when the girl came up to take our order, I asked her, "What can we pray for you today?" I said, "We're Christians. We just had our prayer with our family here. But what is it that I can pray for you that would help you and your family?" And every time I've ever done that, the waitress has never said no. She's always, sometimes they need to think about it and they come back, or they know exactly what they need to have prayer for. And we do it. And she asked last night, she said, "Well, I don't really need a prayer, but I need it for my sister who is just starting high school and is having a very hard time." So when she went away, we prayed for her sister. Uh, it's easy to do when you go into a restaurant and just ask, it's no big deal. But they come away from that thinking, wow, somebody asked me what it is that I need in my life. So that's something to think about. And then God blessed our whole family last night with some information. I'm not at liberty right at the moment to say what that was, but probably by the next time we get together, I can tell everybody what this enormous blessing was in our family.
Yeah.
So it was a give and take situation, you know. So God is really good. And when we think about what he gave mankind, think about that. We were reconciled with God so we could spend eternity with him. Otherwise, it's not possible. God has to take the blood on for all our human beings and all our sinful nature that we do. And God almost can't even talk to us or communicate with us until we reconcile with him. And how
Repent.
does that look?
Yeah, until we repent for our
Repent.
sins and ask forgiveness.
Yep, ask him for forgiveness and ask him into our heart and into our lives. And at that moment, you have the gift of eternity. It's not like everything is going to become healed or fixed in this lifetime. In some cases, it may get harder, but
Well, that's definitely
God,
Paul's case. He was serving the Lord wholehearted, but look how hard his got with all that persecution, jail, prison, beating. You know, I was telling you what I'm reading about in Acts right now, my devotions.
right?
But he still kept serving the Lord. I mean, sometimes it's hard for me to imagine and understand why he didn't turn away, since that was apparently what God had in mind for him and had destined him to go through. Knowing that he would get through it, you know, whereas maybe you and I would have got through it. Maybe we would have just gone right off the route of where God wanted us, because I'm not dealing with this, you know? And that's a lot of us nowadays.
Right.
But that's really hard to fathom for a lot of people, that he served a God that would destined him to go through all that. And even with going through all of it, he still kept his focus and stayed in service to the Lord.
And for me, if you would have known me earlier in my life, because I was an atheist until I was 30, our discussion of the things we are even talking about right now were totally alien to me. And they're alien to a lot of people. But something happens when we become born again and we begin to have a Christian worldview. We begin to look at the world very differently about what's going on in the world and a lot of chaos that's happening around us. I look at the chaos and it doesn't scare me anymore because I realize God is still in control. And this all was in his knowledge before the foundations of the world. So that comforts me a lot. Um, the things that I've gone through went to him before God beforehand. It's like you, in the situation you're in, and my hip, and all the stuff that went on. It was actually presented to God first, and He approved it. And then you think is okay.
What would
He
make you
doesn't
think God
hate me. He
designed
loves
it? God
me.
designed it.
It's for our benefit, like you
Well,
just
right.
said
My
it.
question is, how would God approve it when he's the one that designed it? Because approved sounds like somebody else did it and he had the authority to say yes or no, like say the president does for things in Congress or Senate, right?
Yeah.
So
Well, remember in Job when Satan was
I just don't like the
walking
fact that
on the
that sounds
planet.
like somebody else created us and he approved it versus he was the one that created it. So he destined it
Yeah,
and he
yeah,
intended
because
it.
God said to Satan, "Have you considered my son Job?" And if that would have been me, I would have said, "Don't say anything. Don't tell Satan. Don't tell him. Don't. I'm hiding."
Well, and
And
that's what I was saying.
Satan
How
was
many of
like,
us wouldn't follow his will for our life because of your example is what Job went through because he was serving the Lord, versus mine about
"Oh,
Paul because he was serving the Lord. So we're talking about two different people in the Bible, but the parallel is they both, for the good and glory of God, endured very hard times. And like Job, it wasn't his
no,
entire life, but Paul, as far as I understand, it was his entire life after accepting the Lord as Savior, seeing Jesus and meeting Jesus for himself, being one of the disciples, and so forth.
yeah." But look what Paul did. Look who Paul was. Paul was a murderer, and God forgave him. But he had a hard life after that. Because Paul persecuted a lot of Christians and had him put to death because he was a Pharisee at the time, and so Paul really had a lot to make up for. Not that he really had to make up for it, because God says, "When you're forgiven, you're forgiven." But only Paul could really understand who he was at one time uh, versus who he had become. And then he would be
And I'm
put to
sure he
death for
personally
it.
was troubled by it because think how many women you may know that if they had to abort, have abortion on a child, or maybe they lost them in carrying them, right? The child was born dead, right? That like a miscarriage. I mean, how many women are troubled by that, but that was not their own intention and doing, right? It was something for whatever reason that they did not impact. Like others, maybe they realized that they made a bad decision because they had a child when they're 15, 16 years old, so it ended up in an adoption home, right? A foster care. But at least the kid wasn't aborted. They still were born. But the kid has a hardship. Now, do you think that mother and possibly the dad, because obviously it takes a dad to make the baby too, didn't have a hard time living with regrets and grief and, guilt
Yeah,
of the bad
there's
decision they made and other things like that? You know what I mean? So that's even modern
yeah,
day. That's
there's
like all that. This is the trouble we live through. Even though we may be forgiven, we're still troubled.
Russ. There's unintended consequences of all our decisions. And I want to say this other thing here is when it comes to the abortion issue and stuff like that, men are not burdened with this. Okay, we may be burdened with it when we're talking about our spouse or our girlfriend or somebody into getting an abortion and then paying it for them. But men do not go through this chaos and then this thing that goes into our heart and soul when we go through with an abortion. Um, so men, in a lot of ways, don't really deal with that end of it, the psychological uh, power of an abortion that happens to a woman. I think a
Or
lot
what
of
they
women
made
need
with
to be.
foster, they made with foster care. When that child later comes looking for them, wondering, Dad, why did you leave me? Why did you not take care of me? Why did you not want me? And then the dad gets struck by some kind of guilt, if he wasn't already, right?
Yeah,
And
but
then he's got
men
then he's
don't
got
deal
in a
with.
rut because he's got to somehow get across to the child that's now an adult or a teenager or whatever that he loved
Men don't
personally,
deal.
but yet for some other reason he didn't want them, or he couldn't take care of them when he
Men
could
don't deal with.
financially and not necessarily want. But you know what I'm saying? The whole troubling that they do go through some kind of trouble, even if with men it's not till later in life.
Men don't deal with grief like women do. When it comes to abortion, that abortion goes deep into her psyche. It goes deep
Mm-hmm.
into her soul. Just like having a baby, a man can't have a baby. He doesn't know what
Right.
that's all about. And then birth, birth you know. But and I know there's a lot of women that are on the pro-abortion side, and it blows me away because they have to go through all kinds of gyrations in their spirit to make it okay. You know, um, they have to do a lot of things to talk themselves into it and not feel guilty about it. Um, I know my wife because she had an abortion, and I was a part of too, and this is why her and I are so anti-abortion today. Once we became Christians, we began to see the relevance in all of that. It's like, especially believe it or not, there's a lot of Christian women that have abortions too. And it's like slapping God in the face and telling him he made a mistake. You made a mistake by allowing this baby to grow in their body. So you can think about that and flipping off God and telling him he made a mistake and I'm going to correct it. I'm going to fix your mistake.
Well, but
How arrogant is that?
often because of that, abortion is compared to murder because it's a mother murdering a soon to be, if not already born, child.
Right. It's not part of her body. It's not her. It's a totally different individual that has a life and breath, just because it's taken up residence temporarily, it would be like having somebody renting out a room in your house and then feeling that you can kill them at any point. Well, they were in my house. They were in my room, one of my rooms. This belonged to me. You know, if you think about it, it just doesn't make any sense. And when God
It
tells us
doesn't, but
what
think
He
about what
can,
you're saying. Do you know how many cultures actually allow men to possibly kill as a punishment of disobedience? So I'm
yep,
giggling like it's a joke, but do you know what I'm saying? That's real reality in some countries. That a man can kill if the children or woman does not obey him in certain ways, while in other ways he can disown them or just refuse to feed them and so forth. There are countries that actually allow a man because they say that in these certain cultures, these certain countries, women and children are property of the man, and that the man is the only one um, with the right to vote, decide, work, everything else. He has full control.
yeah, like the Father. When you're talking about some of the Muslim countries,
Right.
and some of that stuff has happened even here. It's like, boy, God is going to have to sort all this out in the end, because there's just so many. It's so complicated. All the different oddball stuff that's going on in the world, um, and it seems to be getting worse every day. Um, so, anyways, I know we're coming down to the end here.
We are. We
So,
need to turn it back to Emily. When you and I get talking, we get talking.
yeah. Well, it's good. It's good conversation, and I think there's a lot of questions in here that a lot of people have questions for. And I'm not saying you and I have all the answers, but
Of course
it's
not. We're not
good
that guy.
to. That's right. Um, so it's good for us to hash over it, and then hopefully it will help other people, and they'll go, you know what? I never thought of that. I never thought of that. So we need to
Right.
think of it. So you and I are doing that. And when you talk to my wife, she comes off from a whole different perspective on stuff. Her and I love each other and we care about each other, and we 99% of the time we agree. But there's that 1% that you need to hear from her. It's not necessarily I don't agree with, I just never thought of. So when I have these conversations, I thank God she is a Christian and a powerful Christian and reads the Bible,
Right.
and,
And
and
very
thinks
dedicated.
about things and thinks about things really deeply, that her and I can, and she's always bringing up stuff. I'm like, can I get back to you on that? you know?
She's giving you a constant test or quiz, huh?
Yeah. I don't want to get hit with an unintended consequence. Anyways,
Surprise
I
quiz.
just think I'm very thankful that wife is what she is, and I think you will find her a blessing here too.
Definitely. We need to talk Wednesday and more about her being on our show in
Yeah,
details.
she'll make you laugh. She'll make you laugh a lot,
So
but
for
she's
when the
serious.
time comes around that she is on the show, will you tell listeners what's the name that they can know her as?
Okay, her name is Monica, by the way.
Okay, so we have Monica. They'll be coming soon, but is in the planning stages.
Just a quick thing. She is a giver, and she is somebody that gives all the time. She thinks that's a gift that God gave her. She works at Hobby Lobby in the fabric department, and she works part time. And you know what she did yesterday? Hobby Lobby has been going through and doing when they checking all the goods at the place and seeing what they have. Um, they're normally closed on Sunday, but they brought everybody in yesterday because there was no customers, so they were able to go through all the inventory. she made a huge batch of chili with cornbread. And she wasn't working yesterday and doing this, but she took it down to everybody working there for lunch. And you should have heard all the people. They were just like,
Yummy.
um, they- yeah, yeah. She takes banana nut bread down there once a week, carrot bread down there once a week. She just does it, and she does that with other people too. She makes extra food and gives it to people, but that's what she did. And so it's just something I wanted to toss out there.
Yeah, she's a giver,
Anyways,
and she'll give to our community of listeners and followers alike.
right. Okay, so I'll talk to her and I'll try to get her on here for next Monday for the
If she
Christ
can,
talk, and then
if she can, will she come to our Wednesday? That's during my meeting, and then we can have a 3-person conversation to arrange
no,
details for her.
she works Wednesdays and she starts at
Oh,
noon and doesn't get off till
okay. Well, we'll
10.
find another time. So you and I'll have our Wednesday meetings,
Okay.
both of them, and then
Yeah,
if you will talk to her and
I'd
see what
like
day
her to
she's
talk to you
available.
separately.
Yeah, and then if you'll
Right.
talk to her and see what day she has that she's available on the Monday through Friday schedule, then you and I can arrange a time that fits that.
You got it.
And hopefully
Okay.
listeners will be hearing Monica and seeing Monica soon.
Okay.
Emily, are you with us?
What did you say? Okay.
Do you have any announcements, John, related to the videos and stuff you're working on?
Yes, I'm actually working on my son's wedding. Trying to it's a very complicated situation.
Okay, so we'll announce those later when you get around to them.
Yes, yes, yes. And you
Emily,
got the app, right? You got the app on your phone.
the video, the recording,
the audio.
yes.
Yeah, good. Okay, good. That's a big deal.
Emily, did you have announcements for you and Kurt?